3 years before my sister took command of her first company, she stood beneath a chandelier in a hotel ballroom outside Fort Calder and announced that she had beaten the Black Viper, unaware that the woman behind the legend stood 10 feet away. At least, that was what Brielle believed. The ballroom reception followed her official promotion ceremony. Brielle's battalion had used the Fort Calder auditorium because her team was attached to the center for the Raven Ridge cycle. Colonel Adrian Holt, the center director, welcomed the unit and hosted the venue. Brielle's battalion commander remained the promoting officer. By 6 o'clock, the hard edges of military formality had softened into linen tablecloths, sweating water glasses, and relatives trying to decide how loudly civilians were allowed to laugh around officers. I wore a dark suit. Brielle wore her uniform, with new captain's bars that caught the light whenever she turned. Our mother, Evelyn, had spent half the evening touching those bars, as if she had personally pinned the metal into place. Our father, Martin, carried the ceremony program in a leather folder, along with 2 laminated ranking sheets from the last high school team he had managed, before his athletics position disappeared. He carried those old sheets everywhere important. Numbers calmed him. Wins, losses, seedings, percentages. If something could be ranked, he believed it could be understood. "Your sister works in doctrine," Brielle told a major from her battalion when she introduced me. "The side of the army that makes the binders the rest of us carry." She smiled when she said it. So did the major. It was not exactly an insult, which was part of what made it effective. Brielle had always known my rank. Lieutenant Colonel was not a secret in our family. She knew when I had been promoted, just as she knew which installations had appeared on my return addresses and how often I missed holidays. What she did not know, because she had never asked long enough to hear the answer, was what my work had shaped. Our parents were no better. To them, Brielle had an operational career and I had an administrative one. She stood in front of formations. I disappeared into offices. She brought photographs. I brought explanations, and explanations rarely survive dinner. I had helped create that misunderstanding. Silence had become my preferred way of refusing to compete. I told myself it was dignity. Sometimes it was. Sometimes it was fear dressed in a better uniform. That evening, however, I had no intention of correcting anyone. It was Brielle's promotion. She had earned it. Whatever else happened later, that fact remained true. The unit had completed a Raven Ridge field lane the day before. Final leadership validation and the formal after-action review were scheduled for Monday, but Brielle spoke as if every gate had already closed behind her. When Martin tapped a spoon against his glass and called for a toast, Brielle did not need much encouragement. "To making captain," she said, raising her glass, "and to learning that some standards are mostly reputation." A few people laughed carefully. "Raven Ridge has this thing they call the Black Viper standard," she continued. "Supposedly it catches leaders who miss what everyone else sees. We heard all week that it would expose us. But we completed the lane. Sometimes leadership is just refusing to let cautious people slow you down." This time the laughter was thinner. At the edge of the room, First Lieutenant Sahana Rao did not lift her glass. I knew her only by the name on her uniform and the way she looked at the carpet when Brielle said cautious people. She had been attached to Brielle's exercise team. Her expression was not anger. It was the controlled stillness of someone hearing a private wound repackaged as a public victory. I felt my body go quiet. Black Viper had never been designed to punish caution. It had been designed to reveal what happened when a leader confused confidence with accuracy. The whole standard rested on a simple problem. Could a person with authority recognize useful information when it arrived from someone without authority, in poor form, at an inconvenient time? Brielle's toast did not tell me what had happened in the lane. I had no access to her evaluation and no right to guess at protected details. But it told me what she believed had happened. That alone was enough to worry me. Martin clapped first. "That's my girl! Finish the mission!" The field lane, I said. He looked at me. She completed the field lane, I repeated. Monday is still part of the process. Brielle's smile hardened by half a degree. We all know how these things go, Naomi. You know how this one goes? I was there. Then Monday should be easy. Mother leaned between us with the reflex she had developed over 30 years. Tonight is for celebration. It is, I said, and meant it. I lifted my glass to Brielle. I did not challenge her score, her conduct, or her account. I simply refused to call an unfinished process finished. Across the room, Colonel Holt had stopped speaking to one of his deputies. He had heard the name Black Viper. More important, he had followed Brielle's glance toward me. He studied my face, then hers. I saw the exact moment the resemblance became obvious to him. He set down his glass and walked toward us. That was how my sister's victory speech became a consequence. Colonel Holt did not make an entrance. He did not bark a command or ask the room to stand. He approached the way disciplined people usually approach complicated facts, directly, without decorating them. He stopped in front of me, came to attention, and said, "Lieutenant Colonel Vale." The conversation around us faded. Our mother blinked as if my rank had changed in the last 10 seconds. It had not. What changed was the way another senior officer carried it. "Colonel Holt," I said, "I didn't realize you would be here." His eyes moved briefly to Brielle. "And I certainly didn't realize Captain Vale was your sister." Most people don't. Holt and I knew each other from a doctrine review board 2 years earlier. He had challenged 3 of my recommendations, supported 2, and asked better questions than most people in the room. We were not friends, but professional respect does not require friendship. He looked at Brielle. "Your sister was the lead architect of the Ravenridge framework. The original standards package, evaluator logic, descent indicators, much of it began with her team." Brielle stared at him. Holt added, "She also led the red team cell associated with the Black Viper name." The room did not gasp. Real life rarely provides sound effects on schedule. Instead, people became unnaturally attentive to whatever they were holding. Martin's fingers tightened around his folder. Evelyn looked from me to Brielle and back again, searching for the version of events that would restore everyone to their previous positions. Brielle knew I was a lieutenant colonel. She knew I worked in training and doctrine, but authorship was different. Influence was different. She had just spent several minutes making a legend out of a standard she believed I could not possibly understand. "You created Ravenridge?" she asked. "A large team created it. But you led it." Before I answered, Holt said, "Her work changed how several centers evaluate." I raised one hand. "Colonel, this is Brielle's reception." He stopped immediately. "And this is not the place to discuss any participant's evaluation," I said. The boundary mattered more than the reveal. If Holt had praised me by exposing something about Brielle's lane, then every later fact would have been contaminated by spectacle. I would have become exactly what Brielle eventually accused me of being: a senior officer using access to win a family argument. Holt nodded. "Understood." "Thank you." He stepped back, but the room could not step back with him. Every old sentence our parents had used about my work had acquired a new shape. Paper training, binder work, support, not leadership. None of those words had become false because a colonel recognized me. They had always been false. Recognition merely removed the family's excuse for not examining them. Martin spoke first. "So, Black Viper is really you?" I looked at Brielle before I answered. Her face held embarrassment, suspicion, and something more painful than either: recalculation. "It was a nickname for my red team cell," I said. "It became associated with the evaluator role. It was never a secret identity, and this is not the place to discuss any participant's evaluation." "Why didn't you tell us?" Evelyn asked. There are questions that sound simple only because the person asking has erased the years inside them. I could have listed every dinner when I tried. I could have described the questions that became interruptions and the milestones reduced to paperwork. I could have turned Brielle's reception into a trial with myself as prosecutor and witness. Instead, I said, "Not tonight." Brielle set down her glass. "Convenient," she said. "Probably," I answered, "but still appropriate." That answer angered her more than a denial would have, a denial she could attack. Restraint left her alone with the new fact. Holt excused himself and returned to his guests. Sahana had already slipped out of the ballroom. The legend had entered the room, but nobody understood it yet, least of all my sister. As the conversations restarted, they did so at a lower volume. People who had laughed at Brielle's toast now behaved as though they had recognized the deeper meaning all along. That instinct, to revise the past once authority identified the correct answer, was another reason Raven Ridge existed. Groups often claimed they had seen a warning after the consequence made it obvious. The useful question was what they had done while the information was still inconvenient. I watched Brielle notice the same people repositioning themselves. Her embarrassment was not only that she had underestimated me. It was that the room's approval had proved unstable. Minutes earlier, her certainty made her impressive. Now restraint belonged to someone else, and the crowd adapted without admitting it had changed. For the first time that evening, I felt sympathy stronger than vindication. Brielle had learned from our parents that visible confidence secured attention. The reception showed her the cruel limit of that strategy. Attention secured by performance can move the moment a more powerful performance appears. I did not know yet whether she would examine the lesson or blame the person who revealed it. Our parents recovered with astonishing speed. Within minutes, Mother was telling a lieutenant's wife that I had always been the serious one, as though seriousness had been a childhood prophecy she had carefully nurtured rather than a quality she often treated as inconvenience. Martin asked Holt's deputy whether Raven Ridge was nationally recognized. He pronounced doctrine with a new respect, as if the word had received a promotion too. Nothing in their behavior suggested they had stopped comparing us. They had simply updated the scoreboard. That was the first danger I understood clearly that night. If I accepted their sudden admiration without correcting its terms, Brielle would experience my recognition as her demotion. The family system would remain unchanged, only the winning daughter would be different. Mother reached for a spoon. "We should make another toast." "No," I said. She laughed because she assumed I was being modest. "Just a short one. We had no idea." "No second toast." The firmness in my voice silenced her. I turned toward the small group around us. "Brielle earned her promotion independently. My work has nothing to do with the captain's bars she received today." Brielle looked at me sharply. Martin tried to help. "Of course, she earned it through that sniper course." "It wasn't a sniper course," I said. "Raven Ridge evaluates leadership across reconnaissance planning, precision fire employment, information discipline, and team decisions. Completing it does not make someone an operational sniper." "You know what I meant." "I know facts don't need exaggeration to matter." That sentence landed in more than one place. Martin heard a correction. Brielle heard a standard. I heard a rule I had used professionally and violated personally by allowing convenient family myths to stand. Brielle folded her arms. "Are you defending me or correcting me?" "Both can happen at once." "You seem to be enjoying this." I had imagined, at weaker moments in my life, what it would feel like if our parents finally understood my work. In those fantasies, vindication was warm. The real thing felt clinical. I could see every person adjusting their estimate of me, and none of it repaired the years before that evening. "I'm not enjoying it," I said. "Then why do you look so calm?" "Because this is your reception." Before she could answer, Holt returned long enough to address her directly. Captain Vale, a reminder that Monday's final validation and AAR remain on the schedule, issued before the field lane. Tonight's conversation neither created nor cancelled them. Yes, sir. Enjoy your evening. He moved away again. There was no threat in his tone. The schedule had existed before Brielle's toast, before he recognized me, and before I submitted anything in writing. That sequence would matter later, when Brielle searched for a reason the process was unfair. Mother tried to redirect the conversation toward cake. Martin asked me whether Ravenridge had a public ranking. Brielle stared toward the door Sahana had used. Was Rao on your team? I asked. Her gaze snapped back to me. You said you weren't discussing participants. I asked whether someone standing at your reception served on your team. She was attached for the lane. She left early. Maybe she had somewhere to be. Maybe. I let the word rest. I had no evidence and would not manufacture it from an expression. For the rest of the reception, our parents attempted to celebrate both of us with increasing desperation. Every compliment became a comparison, despite their efforts. Brielle is visible, but Naomi is influential. Naomi writes standards, but Brielle executes them. One daughter acts. One daughter thinks. The categories were absurd, but familiar categories feel safe, even after they fail. One of Brielle's battalion colleagues approached me near the dessert table and asked whether I could recommend reading on Raven Ridge. Brielle heard him. Tonight? She said. You want homework tonight? He retreated immediately. I told him the center's public reading list was the appropriate source and gave him nothing more. Brielle still saw the exchange as theft, attention leaving her and landing on me. This is what you wanted, she said after he walked away. No. People finally asking. I wanted our family to know me. I did not want your reception converted into my professional seminar. The distinction seemed impossible to her then. In our family, attention had always behaved like a fixed resource. If I received it, she expected to lose it. If she received it, I pretended I had not wanted any. Mother arrived carrying 2 plates of cake. I am proud of both of you, she announced, with the intensity of someone trying to close a dispute by naming the desired outcome. For what? I asked. She looked startled. What are you proud of me for? Mother glanced toward Holt, then back. For creating all this. You learned that 10 minutes ago. Am I not allowed to be proud once I know? You are, but knowing requires more than changing the adjective. Brielle watched that exchange and saw, perhaps for the first time, that recognition did not satisfy me when it was built from borrowed prestige. I was not asking Mother to admire a colonel's reaction. I was asking her to become curious. When the last guests began leaving, Brielle found me near the coat check. You let them think you made binders, she said. I did make binders. You know what I mean. Yes. You let me talk about Black VIPER in front of you. I didn't know you planned to. But once I started, you could have stopped me. How? Her mouth opened, then closed. Should I have announced my authorship before your toast? I asked. Should I have corrected you in front of your commander? Would that have felt less humiliating? You could have told me years ago. That was true, but not complete. We can discuss that, I said. Not here. She gave a bitter laugh. Everything is classified when it benefits you. Nothing about our family is classified. Some things are private. Some things are protected. Those are different. She stepped closer. Did you know I was in Ravenridge? I knew your center used the program. I did not know your cohort roster, your evaluator assignments, or your lane results. Did you influence Monday? No. Then why did Holt look at you like that? Because he recognized my face and our last name. She searched me for a lie. What she found was uncertainty of another kind. The standard she had mocked now had my history inside it, and Sahana's silence no longer looked incidental. "Tell me what Black Viper means," she said. "Tomorrow," I answered, "when neither of us is standing under your promotion banner." Before I explain what I told Brielle the next morning, I need to explain why she had never heard it. The easiest version would make our parents cruel and me noble. It would also be false. When I was 16, I won a statewide engineering scholarship. The letter arrived on a Thursday, thick enough that I knew the answer before I opened it. Mother cried. Father lifted me off the kitchen floor. For 1 hour, the house belonged to my future. Then Brielle called from school because the accompanist for her recital had quit. Mother put my letter on top of the refrigerator so it would be safe. The dinner she had begun planning became a series of phone calls to music teachers. By Sunday, Brielle had a new accompanist. By Monday, the scholarship letter had acquired a grease stain and nobody remembered the dinner. No one had decided that I mattered less. They had responded to the louder emergency. But families can build permanent structures from temporary responses. At my commissioning, Martin left before the final photographs because Brielle had a tournament 2 towns away. He promised to return. Her games ran late. Years afterward, he referred to that day as my training graduation. Each time he said it, I considered correcting him. Each time I decided the correction would sound like a demand for retroactive attention. So I let it pass. Later, after I had spent months on a doctrine assignment that changed how an evaluation package handled dissent and information discipline, I tried to explain the work over dinner. Martin was sorting the laminated score sheets from the last season before the school district eliminated his athletics job. "Does this assignment include real command?" he asked. "It influences how commanders are assessed." "But do you have troops?" "Not in the way you're asking." Brielle had just received notice for a competitive selection board. She changed the subject before my answer could become an argument. I allowed her to. At first, silence felt generous. Then it felt efficient. Eventually, it became identity. Naomi did not need celebration. Naomi did not explain herself. Naomi could absorb a missed dinner, a shortened phone call, a misunderstood assignment, because Naomi was the self-sufficient one. There is power in appearing not to need anything. There is also dishonesty. My parents should have asked more. Brielle should have listened longer. But I had trained all of them to believe that my quiet meant consent. Professionally, the habit looked like discretion. At home, it became distance control. If I never asked to be seen, nobody could refuse. I made myself one promise during those years. I would never use rank to settle a family argument. I had watched officers carry authority home and demand that relatives arrange themselves around it. I wanted no part of that. My parents could misunderstand me, but I would not call them to attention. The promise was sound. My interpretation of it was not. I began treating any clear statement about my own life as a form of domination. I confused withholding with humility. There were quieter examples, too, the kind that did not look like injuries until they accumulated. Mother would call and ask whether I was free on a weekend, then explain that Brielle needed help moving. If I said I was traveling for work, she would answer, "Of course you are," in a tone that turned my absence into a personality rather than a schedule. Martin mailed newspaper clippings about Brielle's unit, and once enclosed one of my own published articles without mentioning he had read it. At Christmas, relatives asked Brielle about troops and deployments. They asked me whether I planned to stay in the army much longer. I learned to answer in sentences short enough that nobody could interrupt them. When I was selected for Lieutenant Colonel, I called our parents after the official release. Mother congratulated me, then asked whether the promotion meant I would finally choose where I lived. Martin said, That's the same rank as the person who spoke at Brielle's commissioning, right? He needed a visible reference before the achievement felt real. I said yes, accepted their congratulations, and ended the call before disappointment became audible. Brielle later claimed I had sounded indifferent, so she assumed the promotion was routine. She was not unreasonable to read what I displayed. I had made need invisible, then resented everyone for failing to see it. The cost reached beyond recognition. Because I rarely shared uncertainty, Brielle believed my career had unfolded without rejection. She did not know about the selection I missed, the assignment I wanted and did not receive, or the senior officer who told me my analysis was excellent, but my reluctance to advocate for it made the work easy to ignore. In protecting myself from family comparison, I denied my sister an honest model of professional disappointment. That did not make me responsible for her arrogance. It did make our distance easier for her to misread as superiority. That was the history Brielle confronted after the reception. She came to my hotel room before breakfast, still wearing running clothes, her hair pulled back so tightly it sharpened her expression. She did not sit. "You let them look foolish," she said. "They looked surprised, because you hid your life." "I didn't hide my rank. You hid what it meant." The accusation struck because it contained truth. "I stopped explaining," I said. "That's a careful way to say it. It is also accurate. You could have told me you built Raven Ridge." "Yes." She had prepared for resistance, not agreement. "Then why didn't you?" "Because you never asked what I was working on without turning the answer into a comparison. Because our parents treated your visible work as real and mine as support. Because correcting that required me to admit I wanted their attention. And because silence let me believe I was above the competition when I was actually refusing to enter an honest conversation." Brielle sat then, but only on the edge of the chair. "So this is our fault." "No, it is shared history, not shared percentages." "You always talk like a report. And you often hear accountability as accusation." We stared at each other across the room. I knew how to dismantle a flawed assumption in a conference room. With Brielle, every precise sentence carried 30 years of subtext. "I am sorry I let the false picture stand," I said. "I am not sorry I stopped Colonel Holt from discussing your evaluation." "You really don't know what happened?" "No." "But you think I failed?" "I think your toast celebrated ignoring caution. That is not the same claim." She looked toward the window. "We completed the mission. The field lane." "You keep saying that." "Because words mark different states. Technical completion is not final leadership certification." Her jaw tightened. "Tell me what Black VIPER actually is." This time I did. Black VIPER began as a joke among tired evaluators. Early in my training career, I led a small red team cell whose job was to remain unobtrusive until a unit's assumptions exposed it. We did not hide in ceilings or crawl through ventilation shafts. We read plans, watched rehearsals, tracked information flow, and waited for people to stop questioning the picture they wanted to be true. One evaluator said our cell was like a black viper, unseen not because it was magical, but because everyone was looking for something louder. The nickname stayed. Eventually it attached itself to the person presenting the hardest findings, which was often me. "So you were the Black Viper," Brielle said. "Sometimes. So were other people." It was a cell identity before it became an evaluator persona. But people talk about one person. People prefer legends to systems. Legends are easier to blame. I told her what the stories omitted. We had no secret operational history, no list of destroyed careers, and no scripted trap that guaranteed a dramatic warning at the perfect moment. We created ambiguous conditions, then observed behavior. Who invited information? Who punished it? Who demanded proof proportional to the decision? Who delayed forever in the name of inclusion? Who moved too quickly because certainty looked impressive? Years later, when I led the team that designed Raven Ridge, we translated those observations into a developmental framework. It tested planning and execution, but its deeper question was whether authority improved or degraded the movement of useful information. The lowest-ranking person isn't automatically right, I said. Listening is not surrendering command. A leader still has to verify, decide, and own the result. Then why call it dissent? Because people reveal their character when information arrives as friction. Brielle paced to the window. You designed a test where somebody warns the leader, and the leader is supposed to obey. No, we designed conditions where multiple people have partial information. Sometimes the warning is right, sometimes it is unsupported, sometimes no warning comes at all. The behavior under evaluation is judgment. Sounds subjective. It can be, which is why observations require trained evaluators, multiple evidence sources, and clear standards. She turned. And you expect me to believe none of those evaluators knew I was your sister? I expect you to examine the provenance, roster timing, and assignments rather than believe me. You already know those records exist. I know how the program is administered. I do not know your cohort record. She looked at me as if the distinction were a trick. Did you ever warn the center that I might attend? No. Your career is not mine to pre-clear. Wouldn't recusing before I arrived have been cleaner? From what? I had no role in current cohorts and no roster access. A recusal without knowledge can become a signal. It would have put your name into a conversation where it did not belong. That answer did not comfort her. It was not meant to. I described the earliest Raven Ridge pilot, where a lieutenant had accepted every objection because he wanted to appear inclusive. His team missed its window while he collected opinions. He failed the leadership standard for the opposite reason Brielle assumed. Not because he ignored dissent, but because he used listening to avoid decision. Brielle sat with that for a moment. So there is no correct personality. There is no personality exemption. That's not what I asked. She was right. I had answered like an evaluator because the sister's answer was less comfortable. No, I said. The program is not trying to make you sound like me. It already rewards people who sound like you. Sometimes it does. Technical language can make weak judgment look disciplined. That is why the record includes what the team does after the leader speaks. You mean whether they obey. Whether they keep informing. She walked to the window again. Below us, hotel staff were folding the reception sign into the back of a van. Her name disappeared one panel at a time. You always had time to think, she said. I make decisions with people waiting. You think doctrine is written without deadlines or consequences? I think you can revise a paragraph. I cannot revise the moment after I give an order. That was the first argument she made that morning that was neither diversion nor self-defense. I let it stand. You're right, I said. Your decisions close faster than many of mine. That makes the information before them more important, not less. She looked almost disappointed that I had agreed. And if listening costs the mission? Then decide, but be honest about what you heard, what you did not check, and why the clock mattered. That sounds easy from here. It isn't easy from anywhere. For the first time, the conversation stopped being about whether my work was real. It became an argument about whether the standard itself could survive the conditions Brielle believed only operators understood. I preferred that argument. She could challenge Raven Ridge without making me invisible, and I could defend it without pretending it was flawless. Brielle finally sat down. She was still angry, but she had stopped searching my face for triumph. She asked for water, read the label without seeing it, and said, "All right, Monday tells me what I actually did." It was not surrender. It was the first sentence that left room for evidence. "The standard is not kindness," I said. "It is disciplined attention." "And my joke bothered you because—" Because you said you succeeded by refusing to let cautious people slow you down. We were under time pressure. You may have made the right decision, I do not know. But you described caution itself as weakness. That creates a climate where people stop bringing you evidence. You heard one toast. Yes, I am evaluating the toast. Her eyes narrowed. You enjoy that line. No, I need it to remain true. She sat again, anger giving way to calculation. If the program is developmental, what happens Monday? Your scheduled AAR and final validation happen. Your evaluators examine the record. You participate, I do not. And if they decide I missed the standard? The program administrator explains your options. You know what those are. In general, I will not speculate about your case. She exhaled through her nose. You can make anything sound clean. Processes are not clean because they are described precisely. We completed the mission. I remembered Sahana standing alone at the edge of the ballroom. Did your whole team? I asked. Brielle's face changed. Only slightly, but enough. For the first time, I knew there was a person inside the boast. I did not attend Brielle's Monday review or receive information while her record was active. After the process closed, she chose to share the AAR summary and her memory of the weeks that followed. Where her memory was uncertain, I leave it uncertain. Before the AAR began, the program administrator disclosed that Holt had reported our relationship over the weekend and forwarded my written recusal. An administrative check had already confirmed that the scenario package, cohort roster, and evaluator assignments were locked independently of me. Brielle received the written safeguards and the appeal channel before anyone discussed her performance. Monday began on the schedule issued before the reception. That mattered to Brielle because she had spent Sunday night imagining the timing itself as evidence of interference. The after-action review was led by certified observer coach trainers. Colonel Holt was responsible for the center, but he did not sit alone at a table and decide her fate. The team used controller logs, lane footage, participant accounts, and recorded observations. The first fact was simple. Brielle's team had completed the technical objective after a controller reset. The second fact was equally simple. Technical completion did not certify the leadership gate. During the lane, Sahana had identified a civilian pattern indicator near the planned route. She requested a short verification and suggested an alternate approach if the indicator held. The information was incomplete. The team was under time pressure. Brielle decided delay could reduce their score and rejected the request. That decision alone was not the entire problem. According to the record Brielle later described, she did not ask what Sahana had observed, what confidence she assigned to it, or how long verification would take. She treated the request as hesitation. Then she told the team they could not allow nervousness to control the mission. They crossed a control line that represented detection and simulated compromise. Under exercise protocol, controllers froze the lane for adjudication and reset. No real civilian or casualty event had occurred. After the reset, the team finished the remaining technical tasks. That was the victory Brielle toasted. Sahana's account added what logs could not. After the lane, Brielle told the group that hesitation had nearly cost them the exercise. The message was clear even without a direct threat. Future warnings would carry social risk. One of the OCTs asked Brielle why she had not verified. I had to decide, she said. What prevented a time-bounded check? The tempo. How much time would the check have required? Brielle did not know because she had not asked. The evaluator then asked Sahana whether she believed every warning should stop a lane. No, Sahana said. I believed mine should have been examined before it was rejected. That distinction dismantled Brielle's defense. She had framed the choice as command versus paralysis. The actual choice had been between automatic rejection and proportional verification. Brielle challenged the wording in the observation notes. She argued that decisive leadership sometimes required disappointing people. The evaluators agreed. She argued that rank carried responsibility. They agreed with that, too. Agreement left her nowhere to hide. The lead evaluator explained that Raven Ridge did not require consensus. It required a climate in which informed people could contribute without being humiliated, followed by a decision the leader could defend with evidence available at the time. The field lane remained technically complete. The leadership gate was recorded as not yet certified. The evaluators reconstructed the lane minute by minute. They did not ask whether Brielle was a good person. They asked what information existed at each decision point and what she did with it. At the first checkpoint, Sahana had observed the civilian pattern indicator, but had not yet formed a recommendation. Brielle moved the team forward appropriately. At the second, Sahana connected the indicator to the planned route and asked for verification. The clock still allowed a short check. Brielle heard the request, but her response addressed Sahana's tone rather than the evidence. "You said, 'We don't have time for nerves,'" an evaluator noted. "I was trying to stabilize the team," Brielle answered. What evidence indicated the team was unstable? She could identify none beyond Sahana's request. The evaluator replayed a short segment. Sahana's voice was controlled. Another team member had begun to ask what she saw, then stopped when Brielle rejected the concern. That unfinished question disturbed Brielle more than the simulated compromise. It showed the climate changing in real time. One person brought information, another considered engaging it. The leader's response closed both channels. During a break, Brielle found Sahana near a water fountain. "You could have been clearer," Brielle said. Sahana looked at her. "I could always be clearer." "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Brielle had no answer that was not another defense. Back in the room, the OCT asked each participant what action they would repeat and what they would change. The team did not unite against Brielle. One member defended her time pressure. Another said the route had appeared reasonable. Sahana acknowledged that her first explanation lacked structure. The complexity denied Brielle an easy villain. She had made a plausible decision through an inadequate process, then worsened it by making the source of dissent socially costly. Raven Ridge was designed precisely for failures that could hide inside apparent success. Brielle heard failure. The program described an incomplete developmental state. Those words felt cosmetic to her until the administrator explained that the leadership validation affected the current Raven Ridge-supported nomination cycle for key developmental consideration. It did not erase her promotion. It did not trigger punishment. It did not produce a disciplinary finding. But an open leadership gate meant the program could not support her in that cycle. Brielle asked whether my connection to the program had influenced the scoring. The room changed. She told me later that Sahana looked at her then, not offended, but exhausted. Challenging impartiality was legitimate. Using it to avoid the evidence was not. The administrator provided the completed provenance record again. Who had authored the standard, when the scenario package had been locked, when Brielle's roster was finalized, who assigned the evaluators, and confirmation that nobody had contacted me. Brielle could still file an appeal after the AAR, but the known family relationship had not been left for her to discover or challenge in the room. Brielle left the building with no certification result beyond "not yet," no proof of interference, and one fact she could not dismiss. Sahana had spoken before the compromise, and Brielle had made speaking again more dangerous. The first action I took after Colonel Holt recognized the family connection was not a phone call. It was a written recusal. I submitted it before Monday's AAR. I stated that Captain Brielle Vale was my sister, that I had learned of her participation only through the reception context, and that I would receive no evaluation information, provide no advice, influence no personnel assignment, and participate in no review or appeal. I did not tell Brielle at the time. A recusal is not a favor to the person protected by it, and announcing it would have made the boundary part of our family negotiation. The center's weekend administrative review established a sequence independent of my word before Monday's AAR. Raven Ridge version control, task standards, scenario injects, and OC/T assignments had been locked before Brielle's cohort roster was finalized. My name appeared in internal provenance as the original lead architect. It did not appear in the student packet, and no participant was expected to connect Black VIPER to me. Holt knew me from the doctrine board. He had not known Brielle and I were sisters. The roster did not identify family relationships, and I had no access to it. Brielle's impartiality challenge was answered by records, not reassurance. She read the safeguards twice. The first page listed dates and approvals. The second contained my recusal. What caught her attention was not my signature, but the distribution line. Program Administrator, Legal Advisor, Lead OC/T, Center Director. Her name was absent because the document restricted me, not her. So she reported it herself? Brielle asked. Immediately after the reception, the administrator said, before she knew the result. Before the AAR began. Could the evaluators still know who she is? They can know the architect's name without knowing a participant is related to her. We checked contacts and access. If you believe a specific action was improper, identify it and we will record the challenge. Brielle had expected either a defensive institution or special reassurance. Instead, she received a process that allowed a complaint but required an allegation she could name. She asked for a copy through the authorized channel and continued the AAR. That choice mattered. She did not surrender her right to challenge the process. She stopped using the possibility of bias as a substitute for examining the evidence already in front of her. Months later, after everything closed, she told me she felt relieved for almost 10 seconds. Then the relief became shame. If I had interfered, she could have made the process the central problem. Once the record showed I had not, Sahana's warning returned to the center. That week, Brielle asked me one question about the review. Why didn't you warn me? We were in a coffee shop and I could hear the milk steamer shriek behind the counter. Warn you that I helped create the program? Warn me what they were looking for. You received the same standards as everyone else. You know the philosophy behind them. If I had told you Black VIPER was your sister, what would you have learned? She said nothing. You might have performed humility around one powerful person, I continued. That would not mean you respected information from anyone else. So you were testing me? No, I was absent. That's convenient too. Absence can be ethical or avoidant. In this case, it was required. The program administrator gave Brielle 2 paths. She could return to her unit with no disciplinary action. Her field lane technical completion would remain documented, but without leadership certification, she would leave the current program-supported key developmental nomination cycle. Or she could volunteer for independent remediation, designed to complete the missing leadership gate. Neither path guaranteed company command. One closed the current program route without punishment. The other created a visible developmental record and exposed her to more observation. The administrator also made clear what remediation was not. It was not an appeal designed to produce a preferred score. It was not private tutoring from the program's architect. It would use different evaluators and multiple observations, and it could conclude that Brielle had not yet demonstrated the standard. Returning to her unit was a legitimate choice, not an admission of misconduct. Brielle asked whether volunteering would make the initial failure visible to future decision-makers. The developmental record remains accurate, the administrator said. So does any later certification. So people will know I needed remediation. Authorized reviewers will know the complete record. She heard the word complete differently than she had at the reception. Then, completion meant the part of the story that made her look successful. Now it meant retaining the error beside the response to it. That was the reputational price. She could not earn a clean past. She could only create better evidence afterward. She had until Friday to choose. "What do you think I should do?" she asked. It was the first time I had heard genuine uncertainty in her voice since the reception. "I am recused," I said. "I'm asking as my sister. And any advice I give will be impossible for you to separate from my authorship." "Then what good is having you as a sister?" The question was cruel, but not empty. For years I had used professional boundaries as a wall, even when no conflict existed. Now that a real boundary mattered, she could not tell it from abandonment. "I can sit here while you decide," I said. "I can listen to what you're afraid of. I cannot tell you which professional record to choose." She left her coffee untouched. Our parents believed every problem became solvable once everyone was in the same room. They invited us to dinner on Wednesday. By 7:15, Mother had described the evaluation as a misunderstanding, Martin had called it sibling jealousy, and Brielle had accused me of enjoying both interpretations. "Naomi can make one call," Martin said. "Not to change a score, just to make them see the whole person." "That would be influence," I said. "It would be context." "Context supplied by a senior officer who designed the program and is related to the participant." "You always make families sound illegal." "No, I make conflicts of interest sound like conflicts of interest." Mother touched Brielle's wrist. "You completed the exercise. They shouldn't hold one disagreement against you." Brielle pulled her hand away. "Stop making it smaller." It was the first useful thing anyone had said. Martin looked offended. "We're trying to help." "You want Naomi to fix it so we can all pretend the reception didn't happen." Then she turned on me. "And you want to stand outside the mess and be correct." I am already in the mess. Professionally, maybe, not as a sister. You let us believe you were doing paperwork for years. You let me dismiss you. Then one colonel says your name and suddenly you get to teach everyone about truth. I don't get moral authority because Holt recognized me. You act like you do. I wanted to defend myself with chronology. I wanted to list every interrupted explanation. Instead, I separated what was true from what was useful to attack. "I am sorry I allowed misinformation about my work to stand," I said. "I am sorry I used silence to control distance and expected all of you to infer what I refused to say. I am sorry the family picture was incomplete, partly because I kept it incomplete." Mother began to cry. Brielle did not soften. "But," I continued, "my silence did not cause you to reject Sahana's warning. It did not cause you to label caution as weakness afterward. You own that decision separately." The room went still. "There it is," Brielle said. "Yes. You don't even know the full lane. I know only what you have chosen to tell me, and the fact that your leadership gate remains open. I am not judging protected details. I am refusing responsibility for a choice I did not make." She pushed back from the table. Martin opened his folder as if evidence might be waiting inside. The laminated rankings slid onto the table. Names, numbers, and colored lines from a season that had ended years earlier. "You two always hated competition," he said. "Competition tells you where you stand." "Does it?" I asked. "Where did those sheets tell you that you stood when the district eliminated your job?" His face emptied. I regretted the force of the question, but not its relevance. Martin had spent his adult life converting uncertainty into rankings. When the school consolidated programs, no scoreboard could explain why loyalty, results, and years of work had not protected him. Afterward, he held measurable wins more tightly. Brielle's visible achievements reassured him that the family was still advancing. My work, difficult to display and impossible to rank at dinner, made him uneasy. "You think this is about me?" he asked. "I think explanation matters," I said. "It doesn't excuse what it causes." Mother wiped her eyes. "I praised Brielle because she needed it. She showed you when she was hurting. You always seemed fine." "I was good at seeming fine." "What was I supposed to do?" "Ask twice." Nobody won that conversation. That was why it mattered. Martin gathered the ranking sheets, but his hands shook enough that the plastic edges clicked against the table. "Those numbers were real," he said. "I didn't say they weren't," I replied. "Wins mattered to those kids. Scholarships mattered. Their records mattered." "Yes." "Then don't make it sound like keeping track was some kind of sickness." Keeping track wasn't the problem. Using the track to decide who deserved attention was. Mother looked at me. "Did you feel ignored every time we celebrated her?" "No, I wanted Brielle celebrated." "Then what should we have done?" "Celebrated her without using my quiet as proof that I needed nothing. Asked about my work without demanding a version that looked like hers. Let two things matter without deciding which mattered more." Brielle stared at the table. "You did it too." "Yes." "Every time I told a story, you corrected one detail and checked out. You made accuracy feel like contempt." I remembered dinners where I had waited for the first exaggeration, used it as proof that conversation was hopeless, and retreated behind politeness. "I did," I said. "I thought refusing the competition made me innocent of it." "It made you impossible to reach," Mother whispered. "Why didn't either of you tell us this before?" Brielle and I answered together. "We tried!" The symmetry almost made us laugh. Instead, it exposed another family habit. Each of us remembered speaking and forgot the obligation to make listening possible. Martin turned to Brielle. "If you go back to your unit, does that end your career?" "No." "Does it erase the promotion?" "No." "Then why risk a written record?" She looked at him, then at me. "Because people already noticed the problem. Rao did." That sentence did not settle her choice, but it changed the question. The risk was no longer only what an institution might document. It was what her team had already learned. Brielle could no longer make me solely responsible for the family myth. I could no longer pretend my silence had been neutral. Our parents could explain their behavior without being absolved by the explanation. When Brielle stood to leave, Martin said, "What are you going to do Friday?" "I don't know." At the doorway she stopped. "I need to talk to Sahana," she said. Not to persuade her, not to ask whether the evaluators were unfair. I need the unedited version. Sahana agreed to meet Brielle in a public cafe near the installation. She chose the time and place. Brielle arrived without notes. Brielle later remembered the meeting in fragments, and Sahana eventually approved only the narrow substance used in a command-reviewed leader development brief. Brielle began by asking, "What did it feel like when I overruled you?" Sahana said the question was too small. The unsupported rejection mattered, but so did what followed. When Brielle characterized caution as weakness in front of the team, she converted a decision into a warning about belonging. Sahana had not merely been wrong in her leader's eyes. She had been made into an example of what the group should avoid becoming. "I kept reviewing whether I had spoken clearly enough," Sahana said. "Then I realized you never asked me to clarify." Brielle wanted to explain the time pressure. She could feel the defense forming. The lane clock, incomplete evidence, command responsibility. Instead, she asked how much time Sahana's proposed check would have taken. "Less than 2 minutes." Brielle had never asked that in the lane. Sahana did not offer forgiveness. She did not tell Brielle that one apology proved growth. She gave her an impact account and waited to see what she would do with it. Brielle said, "I brushed off your warning without even asking what it would cost to check. Then I made you sound weak in front of the team. I did both. I'm sorry." She did not mention good intent. She did not ask whether they were okay. She did not force Sahana to comfort the person who had harmed her. Sahana answered, "I heard you." Brielle waited, because apologies in our family had usually contained a hidden request. Mother apologized so everyone would stop being upset. Martin apologized so the conversation could return to measurable facts. I apologized with such exact language that nobody could ask for more. Sahana did not rescue her from the silence. "Is there anything you need from me now?" Brielle asked finally. "Do not use this conversation as evidence that I support your remediation." "I won't." "And don't tell people I forgave you." "I won't." "If you change, the people you lead will know before I do." That sentence followed Brielle into the administrator's office. She could not make Sahana a witness for the defense. Remediation would have to stand on conduct observed by people with no obligation to like her. That was all. Before they left, Sahana pushed her untouched cup toward the center of the table. "You kept saying we," she said. "We finished. We were under pressure. We made the call." Brielle looked down. "I was the exercise lead." "Then use I when you mean the decision, and we when you mean the work." It was concrete, almost blunt. Brielle repeated the sentence quietly, testing the difference. "I rejected the check," she said. "We completed the remaining tasks after the reset." Sahana gave a small nod. Not forgiveness, confirmation that the record was finally grammatical. Outside the cafe, Brielle sat in her car with the remediation form unopened on the passenger seat. Returning to her unit would have been defensible. No punishment waited for her. She could explain that the program had ended, continue performing well, and trust a later career opportunity to emerge through another route. What she could not do was call the leadership gate complete. She imagined Martin asking whether she had won. She imagined Mother insisting one evaluator disagreement could not define her. She imagined colleagues noticing that she had left the supported cycle and supplying their own explanation. Remediation would expose the weakness she most wanted to hide. Walking away would preserve ambiguity. By the time she opened the form, she understood that ambiguity was exactly what her reception toast had exploited. The next morning, Brielle signed the request for voluntary remediation. She accepted that the process would create a visible developmental record. She requested in writing that I receive no participation, advice, observation notes, or live status updates. When the administrator asked whether she understood that certification remained uncertain and company command was never guaranteed, Brielle said yes. When he asked why she had chosen the harder path, she did not say she needed to prove the evaluators wrong. "Because I still don't know what I do when the next warning is inconvenient," she said. By signing, she gave up the clean version of events she had defended at the reception. Whatever came next would stay on the record beside the first lane. Major Claire Okafor and a fresh team of certified OCTs took over the remediation. Sahana had no role in training, observation, grading, or reevaluation. I remained outside the process. Okafor did not tell Brielle which behavior would appear in the final scenario. She told her only that baseline observation had already begun. For the first time, Brielle understood that leadership was not what she displayed when she knew she was being tested. It was the pattern other people experienced before she recognized the test. During remediation, I knew when Brielle was tired because she canceled coffee, and when she was discouraged because she arrived early and talked about weather. The actual training remained outside our conversations. She filled in parts of it after certification closed. Major Okafor did not begin with an inspiring speech. She placed Brielle in ordinary team problems and watched what happened when events resisted her preferred story. In the first lane, a logistics specialist questioned a movement estimate. Brielle let him speak, then answered every point before he finished. She believed she had listened because she had not raised her voice. Okafor stopped the review afterward. What did he need you to understand? That the estimate was conservative. That was his conclusion. What evidence produced it? Brielle could not say. In another exercise, she asked for dissent so aggressively that the request sounded like a threat. Nobody answered. She recorded the silence as agreement. Okafor asked the team anonymously why they had remained quiet. One person wrote, because she had already explained why the plan was right. Brielle argued that she had been clarifying intent. You explained before they could answer, Okafor said. The remediation unfolded over weeks, not through a clean montage. Brielle improved, backslid, and sometimes used the language of humility to defend herself. I understand how he felt, she said after one review. But I still think my decision was correct. Those statements can coexist, Okafor replied. Why are you using the first one as permission for the second? Okafor taught a 3-part practice. Listen without punishment, verify in proportion to the decision, then decide on time. Listen did not mean agree, it meant receive enough information to understand the claim. Verify did not mean investigate forever, it meant spend time and resources according to possible consequence. Decide did not mean perform certainty, it meant select a course, communicate it, and accept accountability before the window closed. Brielle initially treated the sequence as another checklist to master. She asked identical questions regardless of context. Team members noticed. Their anonymous feedback said her listening felt procedural, as though she were waiting for the correct number of objections before proceeding. Okafor gave her no praise for using the right words. Don't perform listening, she said. Get the information, decide, and make sure they will still speak tomorrow. That second purpose was harder for Brielle. She had spent years measuring leadership by outcomes visible to senior people. Now she had to consider an invisible asset, whether a subordinate would speak the next time. At home, our parents wanted updates. I gave them none. You must know whether she's doing well, Mother said. I know she is participating. Can't you ask Holt? Martin said. No. Because of a rule? Because of fairness. Same thing. Only when the rule is sound. Brielle and I established one ritual that made contact possible without contaminating the process. Once a week, we met for coffee. Raven Ridge remained off limits unless she asked about my feelings rather than evaluation content. The distinction frustrated her at first. How did you feel when people challenged your decisions? She asked one afternoon. Defensive. That's it? Sometimes embarrassed, sometimes angry that they had seen something I missed, sometimes relieved. What did you do? That question is getting close to coaching. She leaned back. You really won't give me anything. I gave you an honest answer about feeling defensive, and then stopped before it became useful. Useful to your process is exactly where I cannot go. She stared into her coffee. Do you know how often you listen to us only for information you could use to leave? The accuracy surprised me. Probably often, I said. You would hear the first sign of comparison and disappear emotionally. Yes. So you did your own version of it. My own version of what? Deciding what people meant before they finished. That was not evaluation advice. It was a sister telling me what my behavior had cost. I listened without correcting her language. I asked for an example. She gave me 3. Our weekly coffee changed after that. Brielle stopped fishing for the standard. I stopped turning every boundary into distance. We discussed Mother, Martin, old family stories, and the strange fact that both of us had mistaken self-protection for strength. On the training side, Okafor increased ambiguity instead of difficulty. One lane included a junior member who raised 3 concerns in quick succession. The first was correct but minor. The second was based on outdated information. The third had no evidence. Brielle tried to reward openness by checking all 3. The team lost time. "I listened," she said during review. "You outsourced prioritization," Okafor answered. "If I reject too quickly, I repeat the first lane. If you verify everything equally, you teach people that all claims cost the team the same amount. They don't." Okafor asked what made verification proportional. Brielle named possible harm, confidence, reversibility, time available, and cost of delay. "Good," Okafor said. "Now use judgment instead of reciting categories." In another lane, Brielle made the correct decision, but delivered it in a way that humiliated the person whose objection was unsupported. The mission succeeded. Anonymous feedback worsened. She objected that the outcome should count. "It does," Okafor said. "So does whether that person speaks tomorrow." Brielle began carrying a card with 3 questions. What am I assuming? What would change my mind? Who bears the cost if I am wrong? It was not an official tool. She made it because she needed a pause short enough to survive tempo. The card did not make her gracious. Once, under fatigue, she snapped at a specialist who repeated a concern. She saw his expression and immediately wanted credit for recognizing her mistake. Okafor refused to give it. "Repair it." Brielle apologized in front of the team, asked the specialist to finish, and then rejected the concern based on evidence. The apology did not require agreement. The rejection did not cancel the apology. At coffee that week, Brielle asked why people sometimes became angrier after an apology. "Because the apology confirms the harm was real," I said. "And because they may have been holding themselves together until it was named." "So what do? "Let them own their reaction." "Is that coaching?" "It's family experience." Meanwhile, Brielle's team feedback improved unevenly. She learned to ask, "What do you see? What supports it? What is the cost of checking?" She also learned that questions asked with an irritated face could still punish the answer. Near the end of the cycle, Okafor told her the reevaluation scenario would change halfway through. "How?" Brielle asked. "If I told you, it would not measure adaptation." "Will there be a descent cue?" Okafor looked at her until Brielle heard the flaw in the question. The standard was not whether she could recognize the expected warning. It was whether she could judge information when she did not know what lesson the room wanted. Okafor's independent OCT team observed the final scenario. Sahana had no role in it. Brielle later described the cleared behavioral lessons, not the protected lane mechanics. Specialist Owen Park was temporarily attached as a signals analyst. He was young enough that Brielle initially mistook his nervousness for lack of preparation. During the planning phase, he reported an inconsistency, suggesting the team's planned observation site might be a decoy. His explanation was poor. He began with a technical detail, doubled back to correct himself, and produced a page of notes that had no obvious hierarchy. The old Brielle would have heard uncertainty and protected the clock. This time she asked, "What is the single indicator you trust most?" Park identified a pattern in transmission timing. "How confident are you?" "Maybe 60%, ma'am, but if I'm right, the planned site puts us where they expect collection." "How long to verify enough to change confidence?" 4 minutes with the alternate feed, maybe 5. The team had time, but not much. Verification could cost tempo. Ignoring him could expose the team to simulated compromise. Brielle assigned one person to assist Park and used the interval to prepare an alternate route. The feed raised confidence. She changed the plan. The adjustment avoided the simulated compromise and preserved the mission objective. It would have been easy for her to believe she had passed. A low-ranking specialist warned her. She listened, and the warning proved correct. That matched the simplified version of Black VIPER she had carried into remediation. Then the scenario changed. Another team member objected to the alternate route. The concern was reasonable. The terrain could compress movement and reduce options if contact occurred. Brielle did not dismiss it. She asked for the basis, checked the relevant information, and compared the residual risks. The objection was not supported strongly enough to reverse the route. "We're continuing," she said. "Your concern is valid, but the available evidence does not outweigh the verified decoy risk. Record the terrain constraint. If conditions change at the first checkpoint, we reassess." She rejected the recommendation without ridiculing the speaker. More importantly, the speaker contributed again 10 minutes later. The decision had not closed the channel. The third test arrived without dissent. A time-critical event required an immediate choice. Information was incomplete, nobody raised an objection, and there was no time for another collection cycle. Brielle felt the temptation to manufacture consultation because consultation now looked virtuous. Instead, she decided. She selected the course with the best available trade-off, communicated it clearly, and moved within the required window. When the result exposed a secondary cost, she did not blame the team for failing to warn her. "That decision was mine," she said during the review. "We accepted the known risk. I did not anticipate the secondary effect." The 3 moments formed one pattern. She accepted a correct warning that was badly expressed. She rejected a reasonable but unsupported objection without punishing its source. She acted quickly when no dissent arrived and owned the consequence. No single trick explained the result. Listening had not made her passive. Decision had not required contempt. Confidence had become a willingness to expose her reasoning, rather than a performance of being unshaken. Okafor did not announce a pass at the end of the lane. Instead, she asked each team member privately whether Brielle had made it safe to disagree. Park said yes, then added that she still looked impatient when he lost his place. Another member said her questions had become more specific, but that she sometimes repeated the final decision too quickly, as though she feared the room might reopen it. The feedback remained mixed. During the formal AAR, Okafor asked Brielle to compare the 3 decisions. "Park's warning had high potential consequence and a low verification cost," Brielle said. "The route objection had a plausible consequence, but weak support after the check. The final event had no meaningful verification window." "What changed most from your first lane?" Brielle could have said that she listened. Instead, she said, "I stopped treating another person's uncertainty as evidence that the information was weak." Okafor asked Park what Brielle had done that helped him speak. "She made me choose my strongest indicator," he said. "I was drowning the point in details." "And what made it harder?" Park hesitated. Brielle felt every person watching to see whether safety existed only for praise. "Please give the accurate answer," she said. "You looked like you wanted me to finish faster than I could," Park replied. "I almost cut the confidence estimate because I thought you had already decided." Brielle wrote it down. The member whose route objection had been rejected said the explanation helped him remain engaged, but Brielle's tone became clipped after she decided. Another participant said the final time-critical call was clear and appropriately owned. Okafor turned back to Brielle. "Do you believe you performed well?" "In parts." "Do you believe you passed?" "That is your determination." "I'm asking what you believe." Brielle took time. "I believe the team had a better process because Park spoke. I believe the second speaker remained willing to contribute after I rejected the recommendation. I believe I decided the final event on time. I also believe my impatience still transfers pressure to people. I don't know how you weight that." Okafor nodded once. "Your opinion of yourself isn't the result." We'll review the full pattern. Brielle left understanding why the result was withheld. If certification came, it had to describe a durable pattern, not reward a satisfying scene. Okafor compared the final lane with weeks of observations and anonymous reports. Brielle went home without a result. That night, she nearly called me. She later said she held the phone for several minutes. Then she remembered the boundary she had requested herself and put it down. Waiting, without seeking a powerful reassurance, was part of the change too. Okafor's recommendation did not rest on one successful warning. It rested on the pattern across weeks. How Brielle responded when tired, when contradicted, when correct, when wrong, and when nobody objected at all. The OCT team considered anonymous feedback alongside observed behavior and the final three-part scenario. The validation authority certified the leadership gate. That completed Raven Ridge. It allowed Brielle to remain eligible for the current program-supported key developmental nomination process. It did not guarantee company command. It did not erase the initial record. It did not convert Sahana's experience into a useful mistake for which everyone should be grateful. The record showed development because it retained the need for development. When Okafor delivered the result, she did not congratulate Brielle immediately. Certification means the current evidence meets the standard, she said. It does not mean the pressure pattern is gone. I know. Tell me where it remains. Brielle named impatience in her expression, the urge to close discussion once she had decided, and her tendency to hear repeated concerns as challenges to authority, rather than possible failures of explanation. What will you do when there is no OC/T? Ask the team what made information difficult to bring forward. Track whether the same people always speak. Correct publicly when I make the error publicly. Okafor handed her the result. Then treat this as evidence, not immunity. Brielle later told me that sentence mattered more than certified. Immunity was what she had once wanted from achievement, the right score, rank, or legend that would make future criticism invalid. Evidence was narrower. It described what she had demonstrated under particular conditions and left tomorrow open. Our parents learned the result from Brielle, not from me. She invited them to her apartment and placed the certification letter face down on the table. Martin reached for it. What's the score? There isn't a ranking sheet, Dad. There has to be a result. The leadership gate is certified. I remain eligible for the current nomination process. Mother smiled with immediate relief. Then it all worked out. Brielle did not let that sentence pass. No. I dismissed a good warning and made it harder for a teammate to speak. Then I completed remediation. The second fact doesn't erase the first. Martin tapped the face-down letter. But they passed you. They certified the current evidence. Company command is not promised. You're making good news sound bad. I'm making it accurate. He looked toward me out of old habit, expecting translation. I kept my hands around my glass. Mother asked whether we could at least have cake. Brielle laughed, and the tension eased without disappearing. Cake is fine, she said. No speeches about beating Black VIPER. What do we celebrate? Mother asked. Brielle turned the letter over, but did not hand it to Martin. That I stayed long enough to learn what the first record was telling me. It was not language she would have used before remediation. It was still more polished than ordinary conversation, and she seemed to hear that herself. Actually, she added, celebrate that I didn't quit because I was embarrassed. Martin understood that version. He had coached teenagers through public losses and knew the cost of returning to practice when everyone had seen the mistake. All right, he said, that I can toast. He left the letter on the table. Only after the decision was locked did Brielle contact Sahana. She told her the outcome without presenting certification as proof that trust had been restored. She repeated the apology and offered Sahana control over whether any future teaching account could identify her. "If I ever discuss the lesson," Brielle said, "you decide whether your name appears. If you say no, it stays the attached team and nothing more." Sahana said, "I hear you taking responsibility. Whether I trust you will depend on what you do when no one is grading you." "Understood." "Don't say understood like it closes something," Brielle caught herself. "You're right. I'll show you over time." Sahana did not promise friendship. Accountability was not a transaction in which an adequate apology purchased closeness. Brielle came to my apartment the following evening. She carried no celebration cake, no folder, and no request that I confirm the result meant what she hoped. "The record is closed," she said. "All right. Leadership Gate certified." I felt relief first, then pride, then caution about displaying either in a way that turned her result into my validation. "Congratulations," I said. "You earned an independent result." She nodded. "I want to tell you some of it. You choose the boundary." We sat at my kitchen table, and for the first time, Brielle told me about Okafor, Park, and the three judgments. She did not share protected scenario mechanics beyond the behavioral lessons cleared for discussion. I did not interrogate her for details. "I imagined Black Viper as somebody who never doubted," she said. "Like certainty was the weapon. It was never meant to be that. Now I think it was about noticing what certainty hides." "That is closer." She took a folded set of team feedback from her bag. Not the official score sheet, the comments. "I'm keeping this," she said. "Why?" "Because the score tells me the gate closed. This tells me what people experienced while I was trying to close it." For most of our lives, Martin had taught us to keep the ranking sheet. Brielle chose the record that could not crown her. She smiled faintly. "You really do talk like a report." "Occupational damage." This time, the sentence was affectionate. Before she left, Brielle asked if I regretted not telling the family sooner. "Yes," I said, "but regret doesn't make me responsible for every conclusion you drew." "I know." It was the first time she accepted that two truths could remain separate without competing. Brielle returned to demanding staff work and command preparation. She still spoke quickly when nervous. She still disliked appearing uncertain. But correction no longer became betrayal by default. Once, a warrant officer challenged an assumption in a planning meeting. Brielle felt herself begin to explain why the plan was sound. She stopped and asked for the evidence first. The challenge proved partly correct. She revised the plan without turning the correction into a ceremony about her humility. Another time, she rejected a recommendation and later learned she had been wrong. She called the person back, named the reasoning error, and corrected the record in front of the same group that had heard the rejection. Those moments mattered more than the Raven Ridge certificate, because no evaluator had planted them. When Brielle was invited to contribute to an internal leader development session, she used the lesson only after command review. She contacted Sahana before drafting it. Sahana declined to have her name used. Brielle honored that choice. She credited an attached team and described her own conduct without exposing protected lane details. The lesson did not require ownership of Sahana's identity, to be honest. Our family changed more slowly. Mother learned to call us separately. At first, she still carried news between us. "Brielle says her board went well," she would tell me. "Then call Brielle and celebrate with her," I answered. "What did you want to ask me?" Eventually, she did. I changed too. When I accepted a new doctrine assignment, I told my parents before the move became unavoidable. I explained why the work mattered. When Martin asked whether it included real command, I did not disappear. "No," I said. "It shapes how leaders are trained and evaluated. That is the work I chose, and I am proud of it." He started to compare the assignment with Brielle's career. Then he stopped. "Where will you live?" he asked. It was not a profound question. It was a second attempt. Martin struggled longer than Mother. Rankings had given him a language for love, fear, and control. He sometimes caught himself turning updates into standings. "So, which promotion is more?" he began at one dinner, then put down his fork. "Never mind, that isn't what I need to know." "What do you need to know?" Brielle asked. He considered it. "Whether you like the work." Repair arrived in small interruptions like that. No one delivered a perfect family apology. We repeated better choices until they became less unusual. There were failures. Mother once invited us both to lunch and spent 20 minutes telling Brielle how impressed a neighbor was by my rank. Brielle excused herself to the restroom. I followed, not to apologize for being discussed, but to ask whether she wanted to leave. "No," she said. "I want to go back and stop it without making you disappear." At the table, she told Mother, "Naomi's rank is not a tool for teaching me humility. Ask her about her assignment if you're interested in her assignment." Mother flushed. I stayed in the conversation. Another time, Martin attended a professional event of mine and introduced Brielle to a colleague as the operational one. I corrected him before Brielle had to. "We both operate," I said. "Our work is different." He apologized badly. Brielle accepted only the useful part. Our parents' improvement did not make them new people. Mother still responded fastest to visible distress. Martin still trusted numbers more than narratives. The change was that they began noticing those tendencies before building decisions around them. Brielle's professional development was equally ordinary. She was not universally loved. Some peers thought she had become overly deliberate. One senior leader told her she needed to communicate decisions sooner. She worked on speed without restoring contempt. When a subordinate made an avoidable mistake, Brielle documented it accurately. Listening did not mean protecting everyone from consequence. The difference was that she separated the mistake from the person's right to bring the next piece of information. Sahana and Brielle did not become close friends. They crossed paths at 2 professional events. The first exchange was formal. The second included a brief conversation about a mutual colleague. Trust grew, if it grew at all, outside Brielle's ability to measure it. That uncertainty was healthy. She could not make Sahana's forgiveness another gate to close. Brielle and I kept our coffee ritual after Raven Ridge no longer required a boundary. Sometimes we discussed leadership, sometimes we discussed Mother. Sometimes we sat in silence that no longer functioned as punishment. 3 years after the reception, Brielle was selected for company command on a normal career timeline. The selection reflected many records, assignments, recommendations, and observed performances. Raven Ridge had preserved eligibility. It had not guaranteed the outcome. Martin wanted a dinner with speeches. Mother wanted photographs of both daughters in uniform. "Naomi won't be in uniform," Brielle said. "But it would look so impressive," Mother replied. "That's the problem." Brielle called me herself. "Will you come to the command ceremony?" "Of course." "As my sister." "I don't know another way to attend." "You do. Everyone does now." I understood. She did not want Black VIPER standing behind her as proof that the outcome was valid. She did not want a senior officer's presence to become an endorsement. She wanted the person who had watched her choose the harder record. "As your sister," I said, "and no family speeches about which of us is more accomplished. Tell Martin." I did. He made a face. "That means he heard you." The ceremony date went onto Mother's calendar. For once, she also wrote down the date of my upcoming move without being reminded. Brielle's command ceremony did not resemble the reception where this story began. There was no hotel chandelier, no improvised boast, and no legend waiting to enter the room. Soldiers stood in formation. Families shifted in folding chairs. Brielle kept her remarks brief. I wore a dark civilian suit again. Brielle thanked the soldiers, peers, leaders, and observer coach/trainers who had taught her to invite evidence before defending a decision. She did not tell the Raven Ridge story. She did not name Sahana. She did not turn accountability into a polished anecdote that made the original harm feel necessary. Command requires decisions, she said. It also requires preserving the conditions under which people can tell you what your decision is missing. Then she moved on. No one looked at me. That was part of the success. During the reception line, a young lieutenant told Brielle that her remarks about disagreement had surprised him. Most commanders say they want candor, he said. Then everyone watches what happens to the first person who gives it. Brielle answered, You should watch. My words don't settle the question. It was not a polished answer. It created an obligation she would have to meet in public. I saw her understand that as she said it. Later, one of her senior enlisted leaders challenged the timing of a planned family event. Brielle's first response came too quickly. She stopped, asked for the conflict, and learned that the calendar excluded a training requirement affecting several soldiers. She changed the date. Nothing dramatic happened. No one applauded. That was precisely why I trusted the moment more than a speech. The warning was ordinary, the correction inexpensive, and the person bringing it had no idea Raven Ridge was present in the room. At dinner afterward, Martin stood with one hand around a water glass. We had banned speeches, so he called his remarks an introduction, even though everyone at the table knew us. This is my daughter Naomi, he began. Lieutenant Colonel... He stopped. For a moment, I saw the old ranking sheets in his face, the need to prove that one daughter's achievement did not diminish the other. He tried again. This is my daughter Naomi. She builds leaders. Then he turned toward Brielle. And this is my daughter Brielle. She took command today. No comparison. No more accomplished, more operational, more important, or more visible. It was a small sentence. It had taken him 3 years to learn. Mother did not explain how much she had changed. She handed me a cooler packed with the soup I once mentioned missing during moves. She had labeled it with the date I would leave and the destination where I would arrive. You remembered, I said. I wrote it down when you told me. That was her apology in its most reliable form, attention converted into action. Martin noticed the transfer folder beside my chair. Is that for the new assignment? The transition brief. He almost asked whether the position carried command. I saw the familiar question reach his face and stop there. What will you be building? He asked instead. I explained that the team would revise how training centers captured leadership observations across repeated exercises. Not a new scoreboard, I told him, but a better record of patterns that one successful event could hide. Martin listened without searching for Brielle's equivalent. When I finished, he asked how long the project would take and whether the move meant I would miss Thanksgiving. Probably, I said. Mother opened her calendar rather than protesting. Brielle asked me to send the public brief when it was released. The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes. No colonel introduced me. No one needed the Black VIPER name to make the work worth hearing. That was the recognition I had once believed I could live without, and the kind I could finally accept without using it against my sister. After dinner, Brielle and I walked toward the parking lot. The evening air had cooled, and she carried the folder containing her command documents under one arm. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You usually do." "Was Black VIPER ever supposed to scare people?" "No," I said. "It was built to catch what leaders miss when they're too busy proving they're unafraid." "People are still going to tell the legend." "Probably. Should we correct them?" I thought about every correction I had withheld because I feared sounding needy, and every correction Brielle once heard as disloyalty. When the truth affects how people act, I said. Yes. She nodded. We reached our cars but did not separate immediately. 3 years earlier, a room had shifted its attention from one sister to the other and mistaken reversal for justice. That night, neither of us needed the room to choose. Brielle carried the formal record of command. I carried the food our mother had remembered, with the transfer folder for my new doctrine assignment tucked beneath it. Between us was no score sheet, no secret identity, and no requirement that one life become smaller so the other could be seen. Black Viper had never been a woman to beat. It was the warning that certainty could hide what mattered. My sister had not conquered it, neither had I. We had simply learned to look again.